Hi guys, today we're going to be making candied jalapenos or cowboy candy. Now I know we just recently did a video on this, but I thought it would be good to run through the process step by step and just add a little bit of commentary and share with you guys some tips that I've learned along the way making this for a couple years now. So we started off by harvesting our jalapenos. We've got 5 jalapeno plants and I harvested 140 jalapenos from our second harvest. Our first harvest was a few weeks ago, and that yielded 135. So between the two harvests, we've ended up with 275 jalapenos so far. So we want to start out by slicing our jalapenos a quarter of an inch thick. You'll notice that I have two different knives on the cutting board. That's because for some reason our knives just don't seem as sharp right now. So I was having a little bit of difficulty slicing through these jalapenos, so I just kept trying different knives until I found one that was sharp enough. So just make sure that you've got sharp knives ready to go. You'll also notice that I'm wearing protective gear. I've got a pair of vinyl gloves and I'm also wearing goggles because I've had many a time where a random pepper seed flew in my eye or slicing the jalapenos and a little bit of the juice squirts out and it gets in your eye. And trust me when I tell you, it is not a fun experience. So once we have all of our jalapenos sliced, in a large pot, we want to add 2 cups of apple cider vinegar, and then we have 6 cups of sugar, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, half a teaspoon of celery seed, and half a teaspoon of turmeric. We want to add the entire contents into the pot, and then we want to give it a stir until all of the sugar is dissolved. Then we want to bring it to a boil and then reduce it to medium low and let it simmer for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, you want to raise the heat back to medium high and bring the mixture to a boil. Once it's boiling, you can add your pepper slices and don't forget those seeds. That's where a lot of the heat is. Once all of your peppers have been added to the mixture, give it a good stir so all of the pepper slices are coated. Then allow it to return to a boil and then reduce the heat back down to medium low and let it simmer for an additional 4 minutes. This is when I like to sterilize my jars, and I've been doing it this way for a while now, and it works really well and it's really easy. So I just take the empty jars and submerge them into the water bath, and I leave them in there for anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes with the lid on. This allows for the sterilization of the jars, but also when we take the jars out, they stay warmer a lot longer, so there's not too much shock when we add the hot mixture to them. So when I take them out, I also like to turn them upside down. This allows for any of the water in the jars to drain out, but it also keeps the heat in. So again, when we add our mixture, it's not too hot. After 4 minutes, we can remove it from the heat and start packing our jars. I like to use a wide mouth funnel. It makes transferring the peppers into the jar a lot easier and cleaner. And I also like using a slotted spoon because it keeps the syrup in the pot and we can get more peppers in the jar. You also want to make sure that you lightly press down on the peppers as you're filling the jars. This allows for less airspace for bubbles, making sure that you leave a 1/4 inch of headspace. We want to make sure that we get all of the jalapeno peppers out of the syrup mixture and into our canning jars. You can see I'm not really rushing this process, taking my time, straining the syrup from the peppers, filling our jars, and gently packing them down in there. I'm not pushing them or forcing them or smashing them in there. I don't want to cram them. I'm just trying to eliminate some air pockets in there. Also, on a side note, when I first started canning, I felt like I had to race the clock and get all of these steps done as fast as possible, get the jar sealed and into the water bath ASAP. And I'm finding that that's not the case. You can see I'm taking my time here. I'm not rushing around and stressing myself out. This recipe is proof that you don't have to do everything all at once because after we fill our jars, the syrup's going to go back on the heat for a few minutes. So we definitely have some time. But I will say it is a good idea to get into the habit of having all of your tools and equipment and ingredients laid out on the counter, pre-measured if you can, because it just makes the whole process, whatever it is, if you're canning, preserving, baking, cooking, whatever it is, it just makes the process that much easier. And lastly, before we move on, I am a huge believer in cleaning as you go. When I first started cooking and baking, there was nothing more unmotivating and unenjoyable than at the end of making whatever I was making to look at a sink full of dishes and knowing that I had to sit there and clean everything up. I found over the years that if you just clean as you go and take a few extra seconds here and there, when it's all said and done, the whole process is just so much more enjoyable. And I think if you clean as you go, in the end, you will enjoy cooking and baking and canning or whatever you're doing in the kitchen. It'll make it that much more enjoyable. So now that our jars are filled with all of the peppers, we can take the remaining syrup, put it back on the stove, set it on high heat, and bring it to a full rolling boil. And we're going to boil it for 6 minutes until the syrup thickens a little bit. And with the power of editing, we can speed up that whole process and it'll be ready in a jiffy. And after 6 minutes, we want to remove it from the heat and slowly start to ladle the hot syrup into our jars, leaving a 1/4 inch of headspace from the top of the jar. Now, if you feel more comfortable, you can use the wide mouth funnel for this process. It definitely will help against any syrup splattering. Now, this next step is optional, but I like doing it because it gives me a little bit extra peace of mind. I like to use the debubbler. It looks like a very long, narrow spatula, and I just press it into the jalapeno mixture and gently press out any air bubbles. And yes, that is the correct name for this tool. It is a debubbler. Next, using a clean paper towel or hand towel, you want to wipe the rims of the jars clean. Any residue left on there can interfere with the seal. Then we place the lids on top of our jars and screw the rings on until they're hand firm. And what that means is you want to screw them on with your hand until they're firmly in place, but you don't want to use all of your muscle or all of your force and screw them on really tight because that will also interfere with the jars not sealing properly. Now we can start adding the jars gently to our canner, making sure not to overcrowd them. I like to make sure that the jars have plenty of space in between each other. I don't like for them to be touching each other. So if I have to process them in 2 separate batches, I will. And we're going to process these for 10 minutes. And if I didn't mention this before, these are 1/2 pint jars and the little ones are 1/4 pint jars. And I'm going to process them both for 10 minutes with the lid on and the timer set. I've got a clean towel ready for our jars once they come out of the canner, and I did read somewhere that it's not a good idea to put the jars onto a cold surface because the temperature fluctuation can actually make the jars explode. So now we can take our processed jars out of the canner, put them on the towel, and let them come to room temperature. And that sound is music to my ears. That ensures that the jars have sealed. If for any reason they didn't seal, you can still eat them. You just can't store them. You have to use them right away. And any leftover syrup in the pot, you can put it in a jar and keep it in the refrigerator. It lasts for several weeks. And you guys, that is it for our video today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.